us Louise Milligan. I'll introduce her properly later. But apart from Louise, tonight we can welcome 25 women authors with crime books under their belts, including a sleuth, I like that. So the official collective now, a sleuth of writers from interstate and one from New Zealand. Three authors had to pull out, unfortunately, at the last minute due to ill health, and that's Lorraine Peck, who did a great job in seeing the Nick Sellings the other night, Amy Suter Clark, and Susanna Levies. When I mention your name tonight, writers, please make your presence known, and if you have books in contention tonight, get your pens ready. Get your pens ready anyway. Ready for signing. So, Susie Allenson, you're away. Susie's over there. Right. Louise Bassett, Robin Bowles, Jacqueline Bubbins, Jackie Byron. Woo! Carol. And Chandler down here. Elizabeth Bland. Better known as Rob McDonald, a brother-in-law. Have you left anyone out? Don't be shy. You left anyone out?
Diane Shepherd.
The books of all the shortlisted authors and some others are on sale down the back there with a lovely Deb, of course, from some bookshop. And her team, we thank Deb and her team for their great support. And Deb would also like to thank booksellers at Readings and Dimmicks.
Saving us today.
Yes, good books. Yeah. And then of course you 10% discount for members. It is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Carolina Beasley, Senior Lecturer at Writing Department of Media Communication and Academic Director of Research Training at Swinburne University of Technology. She is David's sponsor, Carolina. Now, come on. Don't sit down, okay? Makes it easier to get to the bar that way. I'm all for that. There we go. Exciting, incredibly excited to be here tonight again. I feel like I say that every year, but we get more and more excited every time. Swinburne is so very, very honoured to be able to support the incredible work of Sisters in Crime and the Davitt Awards, and of course all of you. And it's an amazing privilege to be in the room with so many incredible storytellers. And 28 was it? Incredible number. So I really recommend you don't try to steal the cutlery because someone's going to be on it before it gets out the door. That number. And of course, an amazing amount of passionate readers. And Louise Milligan, incredible to be in the room with you. Because at Swinburne you have a special place in our hearts. This is going to get a bit serious, but I'll be quick. You fought against unimaginable pressure to tell the story of the culture of abuse against women in Parliament, and to tell the story of an allegation of sexual assault that haunted a young woman throughout her life until she could bear it no more. That young woman, Kate, was a passionate and caring Swinburne PhD student, in our direct area. And I have some amazing Swinburne PhD students with me here, so wave everyone, there we go. And so our staff and fellow PhD students felt her passing very, very deeply. But your work, your amazing work, and the work of all the people that you worked with to present that story has helped put our spirits back together again. So thank you, because we know now that Kate's death is not invisible. So thank you so much. And on that note, thanks also to the Unstoppable Carmel, the Sisters in Crime crew. For putting on such an amazing event time and time again, and it just gets better and better each year. And of course, for keeping Alan Davitt's reputation and her work front and centre as well, and her spirit rolling on. So happy reading and writing, and don't forget that our Swinburne offers arrange very friendly and very warm writing courses that if you need them, we are here for you. But that's that. So wonderful. So thank you for your wonderful writing, and keep going. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline, for those lovely words. Expect to be approached by people selling raffle tickets, if you haven't already, $5 each or 3 for $10 for 3 Big Davitt books, which are that behind here, and they're worth $300. And there's also the Be Immortalised in Fiction competition. So the winner of that gets their name in the next novel by the winner of the Best Fiction Award. We've got a few winners, past winners in our room, Kathy and over there. Detectives, sorry.
In that ball. Sorry. I'm a social worker in Kerry Greenwood.
Were you? Where was I? So later this evening, I'll be auctioning a Macaulay Portraits gift certificate worth $1,000. That'll be interesting, because I've never done that. Meanwhile, please order your food. It would help this rising sun if you ordered by table. So if you start at one, move around. You might have already done it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Enjoy your meal, and I'll see you back here with Louise at 8:15. I'll start again. Please join me in welcoming the presenter for Sisters in Crime's 22nd Davitt Awards, the award-winning journalist and true crime writer, Louise Milligan. Louise is an investigative journalist for ABC TV's Four Corners and author of the best-selling Cardinal, The Rise and Fall of George Pell, which is Melbourne University Press, publishing. The case involving one of the most senior members of the global Catholic Church made international news prior to the trial and throughout successive and ultimately successful appeals. Cardinal won the 2017 Walkley Book Award and was highly commended in Sisters in Crime's 2018 Davitt Awards. Pell has been in the news again. He had a large column in the Weekend Australia defending liberal ideals, so it was added. Today. Louise's 2020 book, Witness, an investigation into the brutal cost of seeking justice, Hatchet Australia, won the 2021 Davitt Award for non-fiction. The culmination of 5 years' work, it charts the experiences of people courageous enough to come forward and face their abusers in high-profile cases of child abuse and sexual assault. Louise was also a witness herself in a trial of the decade, The Crown versus George Pell, and we will touch on that. Her analysis is enriched by in-depth interviews with prosecutors, defence counsel, solicitors, judges and academics. Among the many awards for her work, Louise has received the 2019 Press Freedom Medal and the 2017 Melbourne Press Club Golden Quill Award. Please welcome Louise. So I love looking at people's journey, how they got to be who they were, because I wanted to be a journalist, not someone get there. So how did you get there? So who was young Louise? Were you a curious child? Were you a reader?
I was an absolutely voracious reader who, every night when my parents would turn up my bedroom light, I would insist on the hall light staying on because then I could just keep reading and reading and reading. And it will shock you to learn that I was that one in class.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was, so I was a migrant, I was born in Ireland and then we went to Scotland where my dad was from, yeah, so mum's Irish, dad's Scottish. Came to Australia when I was 7 and always felt like I guess a little bit of an outsider. I was a very sort of bookish type of child. So I don't know, maybe that pushed me more into books and like I love, there's a quote from Barack Obama how he talks about how everything that he needed to learn about politics and social justice he learned from reading fiction, because it's that sense that, you know, you learn such great empathy from fiction, from, you know, seeing outside your own world, characters like, you know, Holden Caulfield and Elizabeth Bennet and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So I still am a really big reader of fiction, even though my books so far have been non-fiction. But yeah, so I went to university to study law and arts and politics, and decided that I didn't want to be a lawyer. And yeah,
I don't think you're alone in that choice.
but it was a really great thing to do because you know, it has informed my journalism so much. So I started my journalist career at The Australian back before it was what it is now.
Yeah. So what was the turning point for you to say, yes, journalism is what I want to do?
I was always interested in journalism, but I sort of decided to study law because I thought it was kind of like a better, you know, grounding or whatever. So yeah, it was I always loved writing. Interestingly, like the first thing I ever wrote, and I won a competition, was a poem about the Eureka Stockade, which was, you know, obviously in Ballarat and was the site of St. Alypius, which is the primary school that became very pivotal to my work in the whole sort of Catholic abuse, George Pell sort of investigation. And I remember only sort of like making that connection, you know, once I'd sort of done that all. But yeah.
So going back when you were young, what were you reading back then? What were the formative books that really shaped you?
I really loved Oscar Wilde, and I really loved Evelyn Waugh and the Mitford sisters, and I was really into Dickens.
Like reading for a child?
Yeah, I was kind of like, I'm going to read the canon. And yeah, so I just, everything that I could sort of like get my hands on, and I still love that sort of literature. So yeah, but yeah, got into journalism, and I think having that background as someone who has always loved fiction really helps with your writing as a journalist, and also as a writer of non-fiction, because I try to write in a more literary non-fiction sort of way. Yeah.
You grew up in a Catholic household. How do you think that shaped who you are?
Oh, enormously, because we were, like I often say that my Irish nana was the Taliban of Irish Catholics. She was really full on. But my dad was a convert to Catholicism, with being Scottish Presbyterian. So you remember that skit, Every Sperm is Sacred? Yes. That was kind of my mum's family and my dad's family. Mum had 10 brothers and sisters, dad had 1 brother. But he was very, very into it, and he still is. He goes to Mass every week, at least once a week. And at like Easter, we would go Reconciliation Mass Wednesday night when they did the washing of the feet. I'm sure any Catholics out there will remember that. Holy Thursday Mass Thursday night, Good Friday Mass Friday night, and then Easter Sunday
What about
Mass.
Stations of the Cross?
Oh, we did the Stations of the Cross, we did the whole bit, the whole gamut. And I remember the usual sort of like being 8 and reading the Bible cover to cover and thinking that I might one day become a nun.
Actually, at the same phase.
Yeah, I think every Catholic girl sort of does. I mean, anyway, of course now it's quite the opposite, and I'm sure if I walked through the gate I would burst into flames. I I don't think I'm super welcome there now. But having said that, the thing that did shape my later journalism was, well, I never forget meeting Julie Stewart when I was at the very start of my sort of Pell investigations. And Julie was an 8-year-old who was abused in the confessional. And Julie grew up across Melbourne from me, and I never forget looking at her first communion photo because it looked just like mine, you know, like she had this sort of stiff veil and the patent leather white shoes and the little frilly dress and all the rest of it. And she was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I remember thinking, you know, that could so easily have been me, and it had completely shaped her life. And basically, Julie knew when George Pell got up in the Victorian Parliamentary Inquiry and said that, you know, there might be abuse, like he might have known about abuse by Peter Searson, who was Julie's abuser. Well, she knew he was lying because she had a letter of apology from George Pell about that. And that was when I sort of like started thinking, I'm not so sure that this man's a truth teller. And I started looking into him, and you know, that sort of like shaped the rest of that investigation.
We were talking about Morrison before and lies. So we're talking about two people in power with a propensity for lying. Do you see similarities in what you know of these two gentlemen? Do you see similarities? Is there a similarity of the desire for power and whatever I need to do, I do? I
wouldn't say necessarily. I think Morrison is quite a different character to Pell. I would see more similarities between Christian Porter and Pell. So, just in a sense, I don't mean this in any kind of defamatory way. I just mean in the sense that both are the sort of people who have been told from a very, very young age that they are destined for greatness. And so in Porter's case, his father told him he was going to be Prime Minister. And in Pell's case, you know, he was going to be a priest, he was going to be, you know, a bishop, etc. And everyone told them how great they were. And they believed it. And I remember in Cardinal, I quoted, getting back to Dickens, the character Steerforth. I don't know if anyone remembers Steerforth in David Copperfield, but it's like his famous quote is ride on, roughshod if that will do. No, roughshod if that, oh, I can't remember. Anyway, smooth shot if that will do, but ride on over all obstacles and win the race. And that is exactly George Pell, and that is exactly Christian Porter. And it's just a complete coincidence that my journalism ended up getting so bound up in these two individuals, because I never sort of sought out to sort of go after these people. That the stories sort of came to me, and the stories in both cases were, as Carolyn indicated before, unbelievably heartbreaking. And you know, just listening to Carolyn before talking about Kate, I still find it very, very upsetting thinking about that week when I discovered that there was, first of all, I found out that there was this woman who was making these allegations about the Attorney General, which of course he has always denied. I found out about her. I tried to, I rang her lawyer, and I said to him, you know, I'd be interested in having a chat with her, and you know, I was very trauma informed about it and all of that sort of thing, as I tried to be. And he said, I think she'd really like to talk to you, Louise. Like, you're exactly the sort of person that she might like to talk to, and the criminal justice system is so terrible for complainants of these sorts of crimes that, you know, speaking to Four Corners might be another avenue for her to feel that she has some sort of justice. So he said, if I don't get onto her tonight, I'll try and ring her in the morning. And I said, oh, okay. And I was just like, my head was spinning, because it was like, oh my God, this woman's making allegations about the first law officer of the nation. And then the next day, I got a call from a friend of hers who I had simultaneously been trying to get in contact with, and he said to me, "Have you spoken to her friends?" And I said, "No." I said, "But I've spoken to her lawyer, and her lawyer's saying, you know, she'll be happy to talk to me and all this sort of thing." He said, No, Louise, but have you spoken to her friends?" And I said, "No." And he sounded like he'd been punched in the stomach, and he said, "I have to go." And then he rang me back about 2 hours later and told me that she had taken her life. And she had taken her life about an hour before the first person rang me and said that I should look into Christian Porter, which was completely unconnected, a person who knew nothing about her. I then had to ring the lawyer and tell him that his client had died. The whole story after that was, as we know, chilling, and ended up with him suing myself and the ABC.
Yes.
And then him walking away when he saw our defence.
Yep.
Right.
Let's talk about the book Witness, because I don't know if you've read the book. It is an amazing read. It's not easy, for one, but it's a really important read. And you look at the experiences of people who have reported sexual offenders in the hope of finding justice, and you look at the courtroom experiences of people like Paris Street, who reported his groomer at St Kevin's, Saxon Mullins, who unfortunately was raped behind a nightclub, various survivors of paedophile priests, and plus yourself. And you look at those experiences, but you also talk to the criminal barristers in an attempt to understand why they treat complainants like they do. So, I mean this tone and chat, I guess. Are you able to walk away with that, from that experience in the writing Witness, to really have any respect for criminal barristers? How do you feel? Like, has your opinion changed on the way they do things?
Well, it's interesting because as a journalist, so I'm a former court reporter, and criminal barristers were my sources, and criminal barristers are actually like a lot of fun a lot of the time. Like, they're interesting, kind of often quite avuncular, sort of people. They have a lot in common with journalists, like they're big drinkers. And I think that's also because, they're carrying around a lot of trauma, and they did actually talk to me about that for Witness. But I was going into it after having been cross-examined by Robert Richter, QC, Pell's lawyer, for a full day in the committal proceeding in the Cardinal's criminal case. Again, the Cardinal denies, and the High Court ultimately acquitted him. But that experience was incredibly bruising, and the thing that just always got me after it was just, here am I, someone who's so privileged and has a law degree, and
First language is English.
Yeah, but not just even that. He's not carrying around a mountain of trauma, which is related to the fact that I was, for example, raped by a Christian brother when I was 8, or, behind an alleyway in a nightclub, or, groomed by an athletics club at a prestigious school, or whatever the case may be. I was not dealing with that. And those people, all the evidence to the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse showed, very frequently go on a very sad trajectory, which is either, they get depressed, they get into substance abuse, a lot of them end up in prison, a lot of them end up not showing, not living up to the promise that they once had. And a lot of them suicide. A lot of them drink themselves to death, And I just kept thinking during that whole day of, if this is how I feel, and the next day I wasn't able to get out of bed, wasn't able to get up and get a drink of water, how do they feel? And this is just absolutely wrong, and I need to, when I recover from this, and when this whole trial process is over, I need to write about this, because I felt really politicised by it.
It's rage-inducing to read.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, but I also wanted to understand how it was from those barristers' perspective. I remember there was a fascinating example, which you'll remember in the book, with a barrister who was cross-examining, running a trial against a young woman who was raped in an Airbnb case. And the mother of the young woman was horrified by the way that this man was treating her daughter. For example, one of the lines of questioning he had was, she had worked for French Connection and they had FC UK t-shirts, and so he was sort of implying that she was some sort of, slut because she had this FC UK t-shirt. And anyway, but the mother actually wanted to give a victim impact statement about how horrible the cross-examination was. Now, this is not something that happens normally, it's usually about the crime. So this barrister was most taken aback by this, and the court eventually allowed it. And I sort of spoke to him, and to be fair to him, he was very upfront. He was very willing to sort of discuss, his thinking and all of that, and I'm appreciative to him for that. But I said to him, what was your response to the fact that this mother was doing this? And he said words to the effect of, well, so what, she's upset. I'm upset that Collingwood didn't win the grand final. Oh. And I was like, I just couldn't believe it.
It was similar to the reaction that Richter's response when Paris Street writes to him to say, this devastated me, and he was similarly, well, get over it.
Yeah, he was basically like, don't define yourself by your victimhood. And so Paris Street, he was also cross-examined by Robert Richter, in his case for 2 days.
16?
15. Little baby Paris, and he was so innocent. And he was like, Paris is such a sweet boy, and he, like me, was that kid in school and was, showed a lot of promise, was a straight A student. And this whole incident, not just the crime, but the cross-examination and then the complete and utter appalling betrayal by the institution that was supposed to protect him, St Kevin's College, has had a terrible impact on him. When I went back and listened to the audio, because Paris had the audio of this cross-examination, I just couldn't believe that he would speak to his 15-year-old in the same way that he spoke to me. Yeah. And Paris still has punch holes on his wall from coming home that day. Like, he thought when he went and gave his evidence that he was doing a public duty, that he was doing something right because he wasn't physically abused, he was groomed. The coach had sent him these disgusting text messages. But he thought that he was protecting another child from this guy, and if he was convicted, then he'd be on the sex offender register, etc., etc. And so he was just completely blindsided. No one had prepared him for the way that Robert Richter treated him. And so when Paris ultimately, I was preparing to write witness, and I had done 4 corners with him, but I was doing some more interviews with him. I sort of said, have you ever spoken to Richard? He said, no, but I'd like to write to him. And I said, well, you should. And, would you share the letter with me? And his response, and he said, yeah, absolutely. And I thought, okay, so Richard's going to sort of like at least pay lip service to, I'm sorry, that you feel this way, it's terrible that you've had to go through this. And basically his response was, don't define yourself by victimhood, but also that he was sort of implying that he had family members who had seen things, and I assume he was referring to the Holocaust here, who had seen things that Paris could never even imagine, And it was just, I just felt so sad reading it.
Is there an inability of some criminal barristers to conceive of another way of doing things that, for their client, if they don't go in boots and all, then they're not doing their job?
Yeah, I think they do feel like that, but I think also they have to tell themselves that there are false accusers out there. There are legions of false accusers out there who want to, for instance, spend 5 years going through the legal system, being, torn to shreds by then. Ridiculed. For what? Yeah. It's not like they're going to make money. They're not going to get anything out of it. I mean, generally the reason they do it is because they don't want it to happen to someone else. Now, that's not to say that there aren't any false accusers out there. And that's not to say that, as an investigative journalist, when people like this come to you, you treat them with kindness and empathy, but you also go through it so carefully. You fact check it within an inch of its life. You make sure that the evidence stacks up, because these are very, very serious claims to make about someone. They are potentially career destroying, life destroying. I don't believe, for instance, in having lists of, Me Too type things where you're kind of collecting, perpetrators. I don't actually like that. I think you have to be so careful about this. However, all the statistics show that false reports are incredibly rare and mostly confined to the family court system, where it's like one parent against another, or people who are floridly mentally ill. And I can tell you now that none of the people that I have dealt with fall into that category. And I have met a couple of floridly mentally ill people who have made false complaints, but you could see through them in a minute. They had so many holes in their story. And ultimately they didn't take their complaint any further because they were too vulnerable. So, but getting back to the barristers, I think they have to tell themselves this story, because how do you go home at night?
Would you do so? You show the flip side, that they are traumatised, they drink too much, there's drug use, there's mental health issues, there's physical health issues. You talk about one lawyer who would go out after a court case and throw up from the trauma, so they are traumatised.
Yeah, and also another very high profile barrister who drinks, half a bottle of scotch before he goes and he cross-examines. And, another barrister said to me, I was at a function actually, I won an award for Cardinal a few years ago, a legal award, and there were barristers everywhere in the room, and I sort of said to this guy who was a prosecutor, I don't know how you guys do this. The secondary trauma that I've experienced through my work in this realm has been really hard. And he said, have a look around, Louise. Is there anyone here who's not really pissed?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, another one said to me that all the best criminal defence lawyers are drunks, and he said, and I am too.
Yeah. You talked about your experience with Robert Richter QC, where you spent days being belittled and crucified. When it came to writing that section of your book and going back over the transcripts, is it how you remembered it, or was it worse? Did you look back and think, it was far worse than what I remember?
I had this terrible memory of it, and when I went back, it was just like my heart was just racing reading it. And I remember Louise Adler, who was my publisher for both books, I kind of sent her almost the whole cross-examination, just so that she could sort of read it all. She had been in court for a lot of it. But she said as well, just reading it back, she was just like, it's so stressful.
Yeah, it is stressful to read.
Yeah, and that's the cut down version. Significantly cut down, because it just went on and on and on and on. I mean, the one that really stuck in my mind was the whole 90 minutes that he spent on the difference between the anus, the sphincter and the rectum. I mean, honestly, I was just like, I grew up Catholic, I don't know what the difference is. What's the
point, I read that thinking, what was he trying to get you to?
He was trying, so basically there was a difference between the way that the complainant had described the action that he was alleging that the Cardinal had done and what he had told me. But the thing was, it was granular, shall we say. And so, and I remember that I had gone back to this guy and I said, oh, the way you described it in your police statement, it sounds a little bit different to the way that you described it to me. And the thing is, you know, any defence lawyer will tell you, any police officer who works in sexual crimes will tell you, people remember things differently as they sort of like go along. It's not a linear sort of like snapshot. And he was telling me at 46 about something that happened when he was 8. And, you know, I remember him saying to me, like, words to the effect of, Louise, you know, I can't remember exactly how far up it was, but, you know, the bottom line is, it was horrible. But this just went on and on and on and on. And the magistrate was like saying, I think we've had enough, Mr. Richter. You know, like she just kept sort of trying to sort of pull him, and he was like, no, and he's jumping up and down, and it was just like, in the end, I just sort of said to him something like, I don't turn my mind to these matters very often. I just, but it was like the room was spinning, and I was kind of like, I was just like, I couldn't even like think, like, what is this? I couldn't think straight, right? I mean, I sort of know now, right? But in the moment, it was so stressful.
And you're tired and battered from everything else that's come before anyway.
It's going on and on and on. And then you imagine someone who is traumatised, who is a substance abuser, who is, you know, not educated, who doesn't have an entire, like the ABC behind them and a publisher and, you know, so many sort of supports and a supportive family and, you know, all of those things. Imagine them in that situation. And, you know, as we know, in that case, there were people who walked away because they just couldn't handle it.
Yeah, you have to protect yourself. But look, the whole point of you doing this is that you and a lot of other amazing women journalists have done some fabulous journalism over the last couple of years, Samantha May or your peers. And this work has given voice to complainants of sexual crimes and sexual harassment. And it's really galvanised women and women's anger around what's been going on in Parliament, in the streets and the courts. We've seen marches, we've seen fantastic work by people like Chantal Contos doing work around consent in young people. And I've got two parts of this. One, how do you feel about giving voice, your role in giving voice to so many people? And the other part of it is that we've done so much to encourage women to come forward. How do we then give them the justice system that will actually do something for them?
Yeah, so I think what happened in the last election was really fascinating. I think that, you know, Scott Morrison used to talk about the quiet Australians. Women were the quiet Australians of the last election, except that they weren't that quiet. They just weren't being listened to. And on that Saturday, the 21st of May, I think it was, women roared.
Yeah.
And we have a very, very different parliament as a result of that. And I think that, as you say, the work that a number of us women journalists were doing contributed to that because, you know, it led to women marching on the streets. And I can't tell you, I've had thousands of letters, emails, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, you know, all the rest of it, from women around the country who are just furious at what has gone on. Yes, I am pleased that it wasn't sort of all for nothing, I suppose. And I'm also pleased that I think that the younger generation, so people like Grace Tame, Paris Street, Saxon Mullins, all of those people, they have a sense of righteous anger. We all grew up with a sense of shame at those sorts of things. I mean, I know when the Me Too thing happened, every single woman that I know was like, sort of going through the back catalogue, you know? Like, oh yeah, when there was that time and that time. Like, you know, I'd never thought of myself as a victim of crime, but then I was kind of like, oh, actually, yeah. You know, like from early teens, you know, these things happen all the time, but you know, there was this sort of sense that, oh, you wouldn't want to be that person, like when the sort of internet came along, because, you know, as soon as you Google your name, then that's what you're known for, right? So, but this younger generation, they're like, well, I'm not the perpetrator here. I've got nothing to be ashamed of, you know, but they still have faced a lot of backlash. And I was absolutely horrified by the backlash that we faced in bringing these stories to public attention. It still goes on. It's exhausting, it's traumatising, it's, you know, it's had, like, I must say, a huge personal cost. I mean, but I don't want to make it about me, because what's happened to these people is far worse and should never have happened. But what I do think now, and what Witness was about, is, you know, we raise these people up. We've had this Me Too movement, etc. We've had the Royal Commission, we've had the Royal Commission on Domestic Violence, all the rest of it. We put them on a pedestal, but then we throw them into this criminal justice system that is not fit for purpose, where they're essentially thrown to the wolves, you know. And I think what is needed is some sort of legal representation for complainants. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily a lawyer at the bar table, because they are not a party to the matter in a criminal proceeding, which is a bit of a, you know, a lot of people have a bit of a misnomer about that, that it's, you know, that the Crown is their lawyer. The Crown is not their lawyer. They are making, you know, that they are acting for the state. But if there was a lawyer in court who could watch to see that the provisions of the Evidence Act, which ban improper questioning, were not being breached, then I think that would be really helpful, because unfortunately a lot of the time the Crown is sort of focused on their task, not so much on the complainant. And it also depends on, like, some Crown prosecutors are much better at preparing witnesses than others. It would also enable the witness to be not coached, but supported and not supported in a holding their hand, here's the tissues, love. You know, this is what you can expect when you're cross-examined. I mean, I had a QC who prepared me for my evidence, and he was amazing. Like, he's a, you know, really, really high-profile QC. And one of the things he told me was that you don't have to be inveigled into a yes or no answer, which was one of the big things that Richter was trying to do. It was like, no, is it a yes or is it a no? And so it made him crazy. I would turn to the magistrate and say, I'm terribly sorry, Your Honour, but this question is not best answered by a yes or a no. If Mr. Richter would like to rephrase it, then I can give best evidence, or, you know, words that effect. And he'd be like, yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. I'm sorry, Your Honour, but no. And, but, you know, a complainant who's, you know,
so many
traumatised person is not going to know that.
So many sectors, though, and this has been decades worth, have been introduced and has adopted the idea of trauma-informed care. Library, we have social workers. Why is the legal system not?
Well, it's interesting because police are way ahead of the legal community in this sense, because the problem with barristers is they work for themselves. So they have continuing professional development, but it's kind of like what they choose to do. There's no kind of, you know, across the board trauma-informed cross-examination school, you know, that doesn't happen. And I actually have been, since Witness, approached by judges and also, you know, certain barristers' floors around the country asking to go and speak to them about this issue. I've also had barristers who think I'm an absolute outrage.
I was going to ask you about the reaction from the fraternity.
Well, I mean, to be honest, like, I've heard more from lawyers than any other sort of class of people apart from victims, because they're interested, and I think a lot of them are really prepared to listen, and that's really wonderful. I think I've heard from a lot more women than men, and I've heard from a lot more young people than older people, and that's one of the things that I looked at in Witness was the composition of the bar. I mean, for instance, in New South Wales, there are twice as many men aged over 50 as women, full stop, at the bar. So the thing that does is because as I said, all women, we've all got our back catalogue. We all understand that these crimes are committed all the time and that are hardly ever reported. I mean, there was one anecdote that I used in Witness. So in the Pell case, the dissenting judge in the Court of Appeal, so remember, he was convicted by a jury, and then the conviction was upheld by the Court of Appeal, the majority, so there were 3 judges and 2 upheld it and 1 was dissenting, and then the High Court unanimously acquitted him. So in the Court of Appeal, the dissenting judge, Justice Weinberg, his whole thing was there was one crime which was basically a grabbing of the genitals offence that was happening in a corridor. And he thought that because this corridor was quite sort of like busy, that this was absolutely, in his words, implausibly brazen. That there was no way that this would happen.
Has he been to a nightclub recently?
Exactly! I was just like, talk to the women in your life, Your Honour. You know, because this stuff happens in implausibly brazen situations in public all the time. First time it happened to me, Royal Show, 14 years old, farmer standing behind me, put his hand up my skirt and grabbed me. And I turned around, like, I mean, a lot of girls in that situation would have, I turned around and started banging with my handbag, but appealing to everyone around me to do something, and everyone just stood there.
Yeah.
So, you know, implausibly brazen is a thing because there's a certain type, and the Royal Commission showed there were kids who were raped on altars. You know, this stuff happens, and that's the kind of, I think, gendered thinking because men, unless they are victims as children, don't tend to experience this, and they think, how could that possibly happen? And you know, it doesn't make sense, but it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, you made a really good, interesting comment in Witness about pedophiles don't just groom their victims, they groom the community. Do you think there's a bit of that as well?
Absolutely. They groom political classes, they groom former prime ministers, they groom parents, they groom congregations, they groom other legal professionals, you know. That's what they do. They're incredibly charming people. And that's how they get away with it.
Yeah.
And it's really, really hard for people to come up against them, particularly if it's an historical offence, because trying to prove things that happened so long ago, and the sort of cross-examination that you'll get, you know, well, you know, were his underwear purple or were they blue? You know, was the wine red or was it white? You know, what part of the room was he standing in? I can't really remember, but what I do remember is that he anally raped me.
And that's also a person who is of high standing, who's become a cardinal, has become...
Oh, I caution that I wasn't speaking
No,
about
just saying.
Yeah.
They position themselves
Yeah.
to be well considered. And the person who is being cross-examined may have a drug issue, may have a mental health issue, has tried to...
Very likely to.
Yeah. Now, I want to move on to this really
Sorry, I know it's really...
No, I'm not running out of time. I've only got through half my questions, but I wanted to ask you about what you're doing now. What next step?
I'm back at Four Corners, and I've got another program on a completely separate topic that's coming out in a few weeks' time. But I'm also writing a novel. And there is a crime at the centre of it. And it's based on a lot of my journalistic experience. So one of the big stories that I did when I first went to the ABC was the Jill Maher case. And I was the first person to interview her beautiful husband Tom, who I sort of became quite close to, and I got to know her family as well. So there are sort of elements of that case in the book, but also lots of other things that I've kind of come across along the way. But I'm finding it very liberating, not having to sort of, because
Fact check.
yeah. Yeah.
If you need help, there's a lot of women out here.
Yeah.
And Rob, who will help you out.
One thing that I really love about it is it's like these characters, I'm sure you guys can all relate, are just like living in my mind, and they're people talking to me all the time, and I just want to do it all the time. But I have a full-time job in 3/4, so I sort of fit it in when I can. But I've just been on a shoot, and every night this week I was tapping away once I finished my filming for the day, and it's really wonderful. So I'm really looking forward to getting that out into the world.
Yeah, we look forward to judging it next year.
Depends on when I finally get it all done, but yeah.
Thank you. As I said, I only got through half my questions. There's so much to talk about.
Yeah,
but
I could talk under wet cement.
Do
So.
we have any more questions, Carmel, or no? Keep it short. No, probably not. All right, you can harass Louise with questions. But please join me in thanking Louise for this amazing.
I was just going to say quickly, if you have a story that you think might lead to 45 minutes of electrifying current affairs, you know where I am. And also, barristers, I still love you.
Please feel free to go and order some dessert if you wish, and you might also want to buy some books from Deb down in there, raffle tickets or tickets to the Be Immortalised in Fiction competition. Join us again at 9:20 when we will finally get to the meat of the evening awarding the Davitt. Thank you very much.
Okay. Do you want to put it on?
Okay, so good evening to our sisters in crime and brothers in law. I'm Carolina Beasley, the judge facilitator. I've been doing the judging for 3 years now. I'm still here. I'd like to thank my fellow judges, some of whom are here tonight. Maureen Kissler, Joy Lawn, Janice Simpson, Emily Webb and Jackie Byron, who's new this year. I particularly thank them for their perseverance in the face of the daunting number of entries this year, as well as their thoughtful and astute considerations, because it is a volume, but it also is the quality of the books that we have to kind of negotiate. This year the judges negotiated assorted work demands, significant family and health issues, as well as the formidable record number of books in contention. But the rewards of judging the 22nd Davitt Awards were considerable. It's not just the free books either. Chance to really discuss with your peers. Now, the quality of the entries across the categories provided us with real challenges, and in my short 3 years, it has become even more challenging year by year. In the category of adult fiction in particular, as noted by Anne Cleves on the ABC last week, Australian writers have, quote, blown open the crime genre.
Right.
And authors here might know all about that. The shortlisted authors in adult fiction continue to expand traditional notions of narrative, plot and place. The complexity of issues these books address has swelled. They took us on journeys through new knowledge and novel perspectives. They featured women who were complex, strong characters who continued to survive and grow despite experiences of violence and childhood trauma in some cases. We thank every author and publisher who submitted books, and I know there are some publishers here tonight as well. We particularly noted the trend to self-publishing, go, you good things, and the significant rise in the quality of books by debut authors. That was really staggering. First books. It appears that crime writing is attracting many exciting new aspirants, as well as publishers who are eager to publish them. In fact, the award for Best Debut Crime Book, any category, so that includes any of the 4 categories, particularly challenged the judges. Each shortlisted book in that category offers a polished and rewarding read, and I commend them all to you. The non-fiction shortlist took us through important historical accounts of abortion reform and political and judicial corruption, as well as singular acts of murder in rural settings. And the young adult category continues to showcase an impressive diversity of perspectives and characters and sophisticated plots featuring feisty, spirited young women. As judges, we say sincere congratulations to the winners and to those who made the quality shortlists. But thank you to all the authors who submitted entries and to all of the readers across Australia. Your combined enthusiasm confirms that the appetite for crime books by and for women continues to flourish. So thank you.
On behalf of Sisters, thank you very much for all your wrangling.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to start with the Best Non-Fiction Crime Book. 21 books competed this year for the Davitt Best Non-Fiction Book, with 4 shortlisted.
It is my great pleasure to announce the non-fiction winner, The Winter Road, a story of legacy, land and equality by Carolina. So Kate is the author of In My Skin, a memoir, and The Romantic Italian Nights and Days, published by Text Publishing, and The Winter Road, published by Black Ink. For 6 years, she wrote a column for The Age and has published essays, short stories and reviews in Griffith Review, Meanjin, The Weekend Australian, The Monthly, The Saturday Paper and others. For The Winter Road, she has won a Walkley Book Award and the Douglas Stewart Prize for Non-Fiction, and was recently shortlisted for the New South Wales Premier's History Awards. Congratulations.
Report notes that in 2014, here in Sunset, farmer Ian Turnbull turned his car into Talbot Lane near Cropper Creek in northwest New South Wales. Turnbull raised a shotgun and fired 6 shots into Glenn Turner, a compliance officer for the Office of Environment and Heritage. The man's history of verbal arguments over illegal land clearance had turned deadly. The murder is a springboard for Kate's meticulously researched examination of Australia's relationship with land since European settlement. Kate explores the dilemmas of land ownership. Does ownership give landholders the right to disturb the balance of flora and fauna, resulting in degradation and at times extinction? Is it possible to preserve or regenerate in the light of farming practices? The Winter Road is an exquisitely written book. The judges all agreed a standout in the genre of true crime.
Can I say something? I've never been to one of these Sisters in Crime events. I don't know the protocols, but look, thank you so much. Thank you, Louise, for granting me giving me the award, and thank you so much to all the judges. I'm very happy to have met some of you tonight. I can't tell you how amazed and pleased I am to be the recipient of the Davitt Non-Fiction Award this year. It's totally unexpected because I would never presume to call myself a crime writer. But it's obviously a very glamorous scene to be part of. Thank you for that. To have my book counted amongst these excellent and definitely crimey books is a real thrill. I actually encountered the world of Australian crime writing, female crime writing, and Sisters in Crime itself when I was a young bookseller 30 young years ago, and now I'm in it, so that's great. When I began working on The Winter Road, I knew it involved a murder, and I knew it would involve something that was very difficult to write about, emotionally, ethically, and technically. And I knew that it would also be in covering a court trial, which I would have spoken to you about. But the murder, unfortunately, was years ago, and the killer himself was dead, and the court files were restricted. So I couldn't have written the book without the work done by dozens and dozens of journalists who write crime stories in fragments, using their attention, their expertise, and their documentation to make the 1,000 tiles that I used for my mosaic of Glenn Turner's murder at the hands of the farmer Ian Turnbull. I have to thank them and the witnesses who did talk to me, and even those who couldn't feel able to talk. I thank my editor, Julia Carla-Munyon, the team at Blank Ink Publishing, my darling partner Tim, my family, and all the people who did speak to me. This is absolutely such a chuffing honour, and I am absolutely thrilled. Thank you so much. I feel like this should just be okay.
Got it all? Fantastic. And then another one.
Thank you everyone for waiting.
Thank you.
The next award is the Best Children's Novel. This year only 8 crime books competed for the Davitt for the Best Children's Novel, and 3 were shortlisted.
And the Davitt for the Best Children's Crime Novel goes to The Detective's Guide to Ocean Travel. Award-winning writer and illustrator whose work includes the critically acclaimed graphic novels, picture books, fiction and non-fiction. The Detective's Guide to Ocean Travel is her first historical novel and her first whodunit. It has also become the first book in the Detective's Guide series because she is a glutton for punishment and for extensive obsessive research, a woman after my own heart. Her intrepid sleuths are now on their way to solve more mysteries in Jazz-age New York, Paris and beyond. Although Nikki spends a lot of time in the 1920s, when she surfaces into the present, she loves to roller skate, crochet and eat dumplings. In her past life, she worked as a lawyer.
And this is what the judges had to say. From the opening lines that herald an outrageous spree, readers know they're in for some fun. In this story of plucky Pepper Stark, who, after much pleading, gets to join her father, the captain, aboard the RMS Aquitania on a voyage to New York. Oh, lucky her. Set in the 1920s, this story offers old-school escapism for readers 8 and up, with Pepper and her new friends on board, caught up in the theft of the world-famous saffron diamond, which disappears mid-voyage. This story has a lot. Many sleuths, glamorous movie stars, outrageous desserts, even a leopard. But the judges really appreciated how Greenbird's readers will have the chance to explore ideas about social justice and classism as they navigate the different sections of the Aquitania, and as Pepper learns a little of life on the decks below first class. Thank you.
I'm going to add a little bit. But thank you so much. It is a thrill and an honour. I'm enormously grateful to Sisters in Crime, to everybody, to my wonderful publisher, Affirm Press, who embarked on this voyage with me, and it was Untested Waters. This was my first historical novel and my first mystery. So grabbed 2 of the toughest genres and mashed them up together. It is
a book for young readers, but it's also a book for all readers because I wrote this with a lot of passion and very much wanting to write a book that would satisfy me and that I would find entertaining and intriguing and satisfying. And so there was a ton of research, I'm a glutton for punishment, a ton of very intricate plotting. There were quite a number of times when I thought this is not so much a whodunit as a how the hell am I going to do it. But I'm so glad that I did and very thrilled that Pepper and her fellow sleuths are forging on for further adventures. So thank you so much.
It's the most divine cover.
And I'm the illustrator of the cover.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Suddenly the name is just Sylvia Morris, who the most stunning cover. I'm absolutely thrilled to have that in front of me.
Beautiful. All right, girls. Well. I'll just do another one. Hooray! All right. Congratulations.
The next category is for Best Young Adult. Categories. This year's Young Adult field was again strongly competitive with the books just more compelling and more enjoyable every year. 8 books were in contention and 4 shortlisted.
The winner of the Davitt for Best Young Adult Novel is Leanne Hall. Leanne Hall is an award-winning author of young adult and children's fiction. Her debut young adult novel, This Is Shyness, won the Text Prize for Children's and Young Adult Writing, and her novel for younger readers, Iris and the Tiger, won the Patricia Wrightson Prize for Children's Literature at the 2017 New South Wales Premier's Literary Awards. Her most recent young adult novel, The Gaps, won the young adult category of the Adelaide Festival Awards for Literature and the Ethel Turner Prize for Young People's Literature at the New South Wales Premier's Literary Awards. She just wins all the awards. Leanne is currently a PhD candidate at RMIT. Congratulations.
When a second girl who attends Balmoral Ladies College is taken from her home, the students and community struggle with loss, grief and fear. The fabric of the neighbourhood is tearing, and ensuing gaps replaced by shadows. The Gaps focuses not on the abductions, but on the psychology of the impact of the crime on those left behind. Leanne writes in a pared-back style using a dual narrative structure told by 2 students. The author's study of individuals and group dynamics is sophisticated, with allusions to the Lost Girls of Picnic at Hanging Rock and Grimm's fairy tales. Although The Gaps mirrors all too real situations where females are at risk, the young women here ultimately claim agency. This novel has much to offer young adults.
Thank you so much. I'm not going to ad-lib it because I tend to say undignified things.
That would be great.
It'd be great for everyone else. I'm just so thrilled to win the Best Young Adult Crime Novel Award, especially from such a strong shortlist. I did want to make a big shout out to my fellow shortlistees, Marie Kimberley, Melanie Nunn and Crystal Sutherland, and thank them for writing their excellent books. Thank you so much to Sisters in Crime, not just for this award, but for the passion, energy and creativity that you harness to celebrate and lift up women's crime writing in Australia. And thank you so much to the judges for their really hard work and expertise in reading all the entries for the awards. When I first decided I wanted to write this book, I actually wasn't sure if I had the chops to write crime fiction. I've always been a really avid consumer of crime narratives, but I wasn't sure that I could write one myself. The Gaps is actually based on a real-life crime that happened at my high school in the 90s, and it's a crime that followed everyone in my year level all the way into their adult years in quite a haunting way. It was a book that was written with a great deal of anger and about sensitive subject matter. So it means a lot to me that The Gaps has passed muster with the true connoisseurs of the art of crime writing. I couldn't feel more honoured to receive this award from Sisters in Crime, so thank you very much.
One. Right.
Thank you, Lou. The next category is Best Debut. The judges shortlisted 11 books for the Davitt Best Debut book, with a record 55 debut books across 4 categories.
And the winner of the Davitt Best Debut book is Before You Knew My Name by Jacqueline Davitt, who is here all the way from New Zealand.
I think I left my voice in New Zealand. You don't need to hear from me.
Congratulations. So Jacqueline Rock Bublitz is a writer, a feminist and an arachnophobe, also a woman after my own heart, who lives between Melbourne, Australia and her hometown on the west coast of New Zealand's North Island. She wrote her debut novel, Before You Knew My Name, after spending a summer in New York, where she hung around morgues and the dark corners of city parks and the human psyche far too often. Her second crime novel, with just as many dark corners, is coming soon.
The judges reported. Alice Lee arrives in New York on her 18th birthday carrying nothing but $600 cash and a stolen camera. A month later, she's dead. Her ostensibly anonymous body discovered by a passing jogger. Ruby Jones is an Australian woman visiting the Big Apple for a few months to escape problems at home. Soon the women's lives are indelibly intertwined as Ruby becomes obsessed with finding out who Alice was and how she died. The judges were intrigued by the decision to make Alice the narrator. When her murderer struck, the girl's life was just beginning. Though dead, she won't let it go. Putting the focus on Ruby was also fresh and fascinating. In crime reports and in traditional crime fiction, the person who finds the body is often never heard from again, like the start of Law and Order. Exploring the complex physical and emotional worlds of these two characters was deeply satisfying. The assured, inventive storytelling in this book makes Bublitz an exciting new talent to watch.
How is everyone so calm? Thank you so much. I mean, this is such an honor, and I genuinely don't understand how anybody's calm in this moment. It's so surreal. Congratulations to all of the nominees. I was at 55 of us writing, taking that leap of faith. I'm so proud of every single one of you and myself actually, and I hope that you take this time to be proud of yourselves as well for that endeavor. Thank you to the judges and to the Sisters in Crime community for embracing Before You Knew My Name in ways that I could only imagine when I sat down in 2014 after the murder of Renee Lau, which came just a couple of years after the murder of Jill Ma. And I finally got honest about what I wanted to do with this one wild and precious life of mine, and what I wanted to say about the lives of young women that were taken too soon. Thank you to everyone who helped me get from that kind of esoteric moment to right here, to my dying friends, to my family, most of whom knew I could do this long before I did, to my incredible agent Cara, my editors, amazing editors Jane and Darcy, the whole crew at Ellen and Unwin, especially my publicists who are also my part-time therapists, my fellow authors who've been so incredibly supportive, and my sisters in all things crime, who've been so generous. Some of you are here in this room tonight with quotes and support and for showing this newbie how it's done. And to all of the readers who have taken time to reach out and say, I felt that, I knew that, I know what that's like. And to the city, to Melbourne, that I've been separated from for so long. This story was born here, and my heart very much belongs to you, Melbourne. Oh God, I did this to myself, I wrote this. And finally, to my dad, who was the biggest storyteller of them all. Next week, on September 3rd, it will be 3 years since he died, and so much has happened since then. Dad, you wouldn't bloody believe it. So I hope you're having a wee dance with Stacey's mum tonight, celebrating just how far your girls have come.
And then another one. Oh!
And we'll just have you stay here for a moment.
Because it's now a great privilege to present the Davitt Reader's Choice Award. All 169 books competed for this award as decided by the 500 plus members of Sisters in Crime.
And Jacqueline Bublitz has also won surprise surprise.
Lucky I'm a writer.
I'll find it.
Anyway, she's won in theory.
Does anyone want to hear from me? Wow, sorry. Oh yeah. I would sing, but like I said, I left my voice back in New Zealand. It's been a long couple of months. Thank you. And when you write these things, you're like, I'm not going to win anything. So it's crazy and it's so lovely to be validated. So thank you so much, my dear Sisters in Crime. I'm so grateful to have been welcomed into this family. And especially, thank you for holding a place for me when I couldn't get home to Melbourne for a while there, like 2 years, 2 months, and 3 days. And my book came out. During that time, you took such good care of my book for me, and I'm so grateful. And because this award comes with a sense of belonging, which I missed for a while there. So I'm incredibly grateful for that. A special shout out to Karina Kilmore, my fellow Aussie Kiwi hybrid, for guiding me last year through my first ever launch, which we ended up having to do online. It's been a steep learning curve, and I've been surrounded by the best and the brightest right from the start, even with all that distance between us. I've done it again. On this night celebrating sisterhood, I'd like to dedicate this award to my soul sisters, to Bron, Stacey, and Paul. I'm so happy. I'm so happy to finally be able to celebrate with you and to give you a break from my writerly angst, which we put up with for like more than a decade. There is nothing I love more than sitting on the porch with you at Rye, figuring out who we're going to murder next. But tonight is pretty much up there too. Thank you for dancing into this unknown with me, my great loves.
All right, now we're getting to the big ones. Best Adult Novel. Tonight, another record, an astonishing 132 novels competed for the Davitt Best Adult Novel, with 11 books shortlisted. And that sounds a lot, but what a lot of talent presented on this list. We have,
Yes, we do have a highly commended in this category, and that is Unforgiven by Sarah Barry. Sarah Barry is the author of 9 novels, including her best-selling print debut, Secrets of Whitewater Creek, the Hunter's Ridge trilogy, the Calico Mountain trilogy, and her new series. In a past life, while gaining degrees in arts, science and education, Sarah worked as a teacher, a vet nurse, a horse trainer and a magazine editor before deciding she wanted to write novels. About the only thing that has remained constant is her passion for all things crime. When she's not writing, her favourite pastime involves hiding away with a good Irish whiskey and a copy of her next favourite true crime story.
The judges were impressed. They said, whiskey devotee and part-time prostitute, sex worker, Lexi Winter, a victim of infamous pedophile The Spider, is also an expert hacker who hunts online predators. She tracks a rock spider and witnesses a murder, but her unconventional and illegal methods preclude involving the police. After a TV documentary, Detective Inspector Rachel Langley, who convicted the spider, is contacted by a man claiming to be the real spider. Rachel is sure she got it right, but when a young girl is murdered in a method unnervingly similar to the spider's, her confidence flags. Did she get it wrong? Lexi and Rachel are thrown together to unearth the truth. The judges agreed Unforgiven is jam-packed with unusual characters, a lick of humour and plenty of twists and turns in this explosive thriller.
Sarah can't be here tonight but says, I'm thrilled Unforgiven has been highly commended in the prestigious Davitt Awards. I'm so grateful to Sisters in Crime for the extensive and important work they do in supporting and promoting Australian female crime writers.
Well done, you two. Congratulations. Such good colour. Thank you.
Now. So, big drum roll, please. And the winner of the 2022 Davitt Award for Best Adult Novel is Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McCarthy. Charlotte is the author of the New York Times bestseller, Once There Were Wolves, winner of the Indie Book Award for Fiction 2022, and a Nautilus Gold, sorry, this is going over the page, award, and the international bestseller Migrations, a Time magazine Best Book of the Year, and the Amazon.com Best Fiction Book of the Year for 2020, which has been translated into over 20 languages and adapted for film. She is basically completely awesome. And she has both a graduate degree in screenwriting and a master's degree in screen arts, and lives in Sydney, Australia with her partner and son.
This beautifully written book is founded on the challenge of rewilding, the reintroduction of grey wolves to the remote highlands of Scotland hundreds of years after they were hunted to extinction. Unsurprisingly, the return of wolves by biologist Inti Flynn angers the local villagers, or is it Inti, many of whom fear for the safety of their sheep and indeed for themselves. During a tense public meeting, she challenges the community's fears, claiming, "We're the people killers, the children killers, we're the monsters." Readers confront this provocation throughout the novel as McConaughey meshes themes of domestic and sexual violence, suspected murder, and the destruction of humans are inflicting on a natural world. The book asks difficult questions such as, can women unmade by trauma be healed through love, sisterhood in the natural world? The judges were enthralled by this contribution to Enviro Noir. Oh. You guys just made that up.
Oh, wow, how amazing. Thank you so much. I'm very sorry I have to read off my phone. I don't have a printer.
Oh! Here's one I prepared.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much to the Davitt Sisters Award for this wonderful, surprising honour. I'm over the moon because this award is one that claims a space for women writers that is long overdue and deeply deserved, so it means a lot. I need to thank my gorgeous and fierce publisher at Penguin Random House, Nikki Christa. I'm so lucky to work with you and your whole team at Penguin Random House. Thank you. I'm so proud of this team of women who brought this book into the world, and I'm proud also of the cohort of women crime writers that I can now count myself among. The long-listed and shortlisted writers must be congratulated. They are women I am inspired by and admire endlessly, my sisters in crime. I want to thank my family, my strong female role models, in particular my mother, who supported me to write all my life and told me it was okay not to do my homework but to write my book instead. My amazing partner Morgan, my beautiful boy Finn. This book, Once There Were Wolves, is, like many crime novels, about the darkest, cruelest sides of humanity. It's about the harm we do not just to each other but to the natural world and the wild creatures that we share this planet with. It was therefore challenging and sometimes very heartbreaking to write. But it is also ultimately about the triumph of tenderness. It's about love and compassion and generosity. It's about our profound capacity to nurture. And in rewilding not only landscapes but ourselves too,
it declares loudly and proudly that the wildest parts of ourselves, and particularly of women, to be the strongest, kindest, and most essential parts. So I'd like to thank the judges for awarding this strange hybrid of a novel such an important honour in the crime community. I receive it proudly. Thank you.
Fantastic. Right.
Well done. Travel time.
Travel time. And there we go.
Books here, full of wonderful books by a lot of women in this room, and Louise is going to pull out a number.
I feel like Delvin Delaney on This is a new job for me. It's a lot less distressing than the one that I do here.
The number is?
And it is, sorry, I'm a bit. It's orange, and it's C98098.
That's me. Former Davitt winner. And a Scarlet Award winner. Oh, fantastic. That's amazing.
Number two.
It's blue. Sorry, I'm terrible finding my skills. It's B44.
Oh, go Rob! Yeah, sorry, I was just admiring the last winner. Sorry. Anyway, there's a great book called Witness, particularly on their first outing. Yeah. All right, here we go. Sorry. Stay there, Rob.
Thank you very much. Okay, one more chance for everyone.
It is B26.
B26.
Three orders in a row. Oh, that's you.
Work here is done.
Whoever you draw out of here, their name will be in the next one. Okay. Another in.
It's an initial. RWR.
you. Thank you, I did now to auction the Coley Portraits gift certificate worth $1,000 and postage, which includes an initial 30-minute consultation by Zoom and one 60 to 90-minute creative portrait session worth $350 and a finely crafted battered and mounted portrait valued at $650. Previous successful bids have been Maggie Barron and Claire Hill. Great for authors, but you don't want to be an author to benefit from this gift certificate. Alrighty. What do we start? 50?
We need to go up higher.
Can anyone start me off with $50? Yes, over here. Can we go up by another 50?
Sorry, I'm just telling Karina what's for.
We have for $50. Anyone advance on 50? I'll take 20s. Lindy Cameron, $70. Advance on $70. Down here. 90? $90. Do I see an advance on $90? 100. Okay, over here. Advance on 100. 121. Any advance on 100? 100. Is that a hand? 120? 120. Advances on 120. This is a great opportunity for some really nice portraits for you to hang up in your house and to put on your next book. It is a lot of money, but it's only $120 worth at the moment. Can we have more advance? Yes? 150 over here. 150. Any advance on 150? Great photos. Maggie will tell you how good it is. Karina will tell you how good it is. These portraits, fabulous. $150 over here. Any advance on 150? No. 200 over here. Maggie Barron's going for another round. Advances on 200. It's over there for 200. 250 over here. 250 is sitting over here, Bob. We've been winning things left, right, and centre tonight. 250. And the advances on 250. Beautiful portraits. Great opportunity. Are we all done? Are we all silent? Is that okay? So. Alrighty, we are finishing up. Just before closing, some announcements. Davitt Awards short story competition offers $12,365 in prizes this year. And it's not closing until the 31st of August, so you have got time to get your story in. Grab an entry form on your way out. The next Sisters events are, there's two Sisters in Crime library events. Thursday the 15th at 6 o'clock at Brighton Library. That's with the unbelievable Vicky Petratus, who's launched her new book, Unbelievable. Thursday the 22nd September at 6 p.m. at St Kilda, Bodies on the Beach with Emma Wiskich and Ethan Clifford in conversation with Lee Redhead. Friday the 7th of October, Murder Mystery Memory with Megan Golden, Nell Pierce and Taylor Chandler in conversation here at the Rising Sun. With Kirsty Manning, with Leonardo and Catherine Kovacic in conversation with Angela Savage here at the Rising Sun.